Thrilled to be having this conversation today. And for everybody that has joined or is about to join, welcome. And I want to wish everybody a happy early International Women's Day as we get ready for this. Um, my name is Jessica Knox. I'm the CEO of Metrix, and I am joined by two incredible leaders who I'm going to introduce soon. But before I do, I'd like to just set the stage for a minute about why we're here. We're really at a moment right now where the life sciences industry is experiencing what I believe is one of the most disruptive periods in history. The change really is not slowing down. Just to ground us in a few realities that have shaped last year and are going to continue to shape this year. AI is, I would say, no longer experimental in pharma. So it's very much becoming embedded in ways of working. Executives are making big bets on it. There have always been many org changes in life sciences. They were particularly frequent last year. And also very importantly, that the commercial environments are becoming more complex. So when you think about some of the regulatory pressures that are happening right now, tariffs are now a word everybody is using. So a lot is happening. So the question is not whether life sciences will continue to change, because we know that it will and that change is accelerating. It's really about how we lead that. How are we going to lead that change? How are we going to equip our people to keep learning and not to fall behind? And so that's really what this conversation is about. I'm, as I said, very excited to be joined by two leaders who are navigating this reality of change every day. I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with both of these incredible individuals. They both have extensive backgrounds, both in life sciences and in learning and development. And I'm going to ask each to introduce themselves. So, starting with Kristy, why don't you briefly introduce yourself to our attendees?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for bringing me to the table to have this discussion. It is a very important one and one I love to be a part of. So, I have the pleasure of leading the learning and leadership development team at GE Healthcare, and I've had an extensive career within pharma and medical both. So, excited for the discussion today, Jessica. Thank you.
Amazing. And Sandy, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And if anybody's wondering, I was the one having a little bit of technical difficulty on the back end. So graceful as a swan on top, but pedaling fast underneath the water here to join you all. But excited to be here on this topic, especially as we're kicking off International Women's Day, which I believe is actually Sunday. But the topic, as you set it up, Jessica, is so perfect for what we're experiencing and how we lead through change. I think is whether you're a people leader yourself or you're leading without direct reports, we're all leaders as women. And as we really look at the influence that we can have for our organizations in the learning and development space is so critical. So excited to be part of this conversation and learn from you and Kristy and just share a little bit of my perspectives along the way.
Wonderful. And Sandy, you are at Novo Nordisk.
I'm at Novo Nordisk, yes. And I thank you for reminding me that I'm at Novo Nordisk and I lead the learning and development for both frontline and leadership for the rare disease side of our organization.
Fantastic. Okay, we are going to dive right in. It's going to be conversational. If anybody on the line has a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll keep our eye on that. But otherwise, we're gonna talk, and from what I know, there's gonna be a lot of great things we're gonna talk about. So, wanted to start with something more, I guess, personal to each of you. So when you look back on your journey and your leadership story, what's the through line or the theme that's been consistent even as your roles have changed? And Sandy, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, definitely. You know, if I think about the red thread, whether it's been at my time in the pharmaceutical industry, as a leader or outside of the pharmaceutical industry as a leader, I would say the one thread that rings throughout is really authenticity, grounded in trust. I believe as a leader of people, that my job and my role is to coach, right? To focus on inspiring and developing people, um, so that when I give clear direction, that they feel empowered and know what to do, and that and they have the confidence, right? But not only that, that there's this psychologically safe environment where they can raise their hand and challenge, and we all get better that way. I do think that I don't always get it right, though, right? And I think that's part of the learning as a leader. So, what I have learned along the way, I used to be hard on myself, a perfectionist, and would just swirl in my mind. But as I've grown in my leadership ability, I've really learned to give myself grace, to take that time to reflect and learn, so that I get better at what I do. Because ultimately, I think when we lead with authenticity, our teams just become more confident. They're more adaptable and better equipped to excel. And now more than ever, this is important capabilities and skills that everyone needs. So that's really how I look at it.
I love that. And there's a real connection, I think, between authenticity and making people feel psychologically safe and giving yourself that same, grace. So I love that. Kristy, what about you?
Sure. Interesting question. And as I reflect on it, I think the key thing that I would share as a through line for me has been the fact that I can make complex more simplistic. And it has been a gift of mine, and I feel like it's been strengthened by three different areas. And the first being the fact that I worked from startup to multi-billion-dollar companies, and seeing things done in different ways helps you to adapt, makes you more agile, and builds the tools within your toolbox, because you're not trying to force one way of doing something. The second being the multiple roles that I have held within the commercial space. So whether it be sales, marketing, management, leadership, and learning development, all of that helps me to put myself in the different perspective of the various stakeholders that we work with. And then the final thing being that I have a passion and a continual study of human behavior, whether it's my master's or being an executive coach, understanding the why behind people's behavior and helping to pull all of those together. And I have always felt like learning and development is the key space where you can be the strategic enabler for organizations. And it's not always easy to get everyone bought into that. So I really have to lean into a vast array of talents to try to help bring people along.
Mm. And if I could add what I see as a red thread between both of you is really a curiosity and about yourself, about others, and the passion I think really comes through. So very cool and some good notes. It sounds like Kristy, you gave yourself almost a rotational, with a lot of leadership programs you could rotate through, and you sort of did it yourself, I think. So that's good.
Unintentionally and very fluid, which is more my style than a forced programmatic way.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
I mean,
Jessica,
we're
I was
here.
just going to add
Yeah.
maybe one thing to what Kristy said that I really liked how, she talked about when we think about our roles as learning and development, and we're that strategic enabler, right? That we're connecting the dots, and really that goal to be how are we bringing trust and value to the organization? And it's, how we show up, because oftentimes I believe it's our role that I'll back up a little bit. It's easy to get to work in silos, especially on big projects with multiple teams. And so I do believe that this role in and development, we're there to help connect the dots,
Mm,
right? And then to make sure that the training that we're doing for whatever it is that it's the right training that's going to hit the mark, that's going to drive impact. But it all comes back to just building that trust and value, and being seen as someone that needs a seat at the table when
hmm.
these decisions are being made.
Absolutely. I mean, L&D, maybe not always the same team, but L&D is one of the few functions that really works across it touches every other function, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in a very interesting position. Um, we're here to talk about change. So before we dive in, uh, curious, what types of changes have either been a part of or led as a leader. And Kristy, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think change for me in that question is the ability to transform learning and leadership development teams. I would say it's my second tour of duty in doing that, previously at Baxter and now at GE Healthcare. And as the business changes, we need to ensure that L&D is adapting as well. If you are still doing what you did 10 years ago, or even COVID or right after COVID, the pace of change is so vast right now that business is going to pass you up and you're no longer going to be relevant. So just like we talked about at the very first question is making sure that we are relevant and have a seat at the table. We need to be able to be as nimble, agile as we can be to meet the needs of the business.
Amazing. And when you say transforming did you say learning and leadership? Is that
Yeah,
the learning
yeah.
function itself? And tell me a bit more about leadership.
Yeah, so I have had the pleasure of working with amazing teammates. The teams that I have been able to lead have all had extreme talent. So it's leaning into that and identifying what the different skill sets are within the team members and also pairing that with the needs of the business. So being able to also when you talk about leadership, so what are the skills necessary now, but what are the skills necessary in the future? So that's something that's very fascinating to me, and pulling that forward, and then what would that look like and how do you do that and create that, and also make it something that people can apply right away so they want to do it. I think the days of the theoretical study of leadership are probably past. And instead, it needs to be quick, immediate, personalized, which I'm sure we'll get into later in our conversation of how the time is so ripe for us within L&D to help do that for any of our attendees and learners that are willing to come and partake in what we offer.
Mm, yeah, a lot to consider there, and I think yeah, definitely, I think some t topics we're going to touch on more as we go. Sandy, what about you? What changes have you been a part of?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I smile and laugh because if you're in the pharmaceutical industry, change is happening all the time, right? And we're experiencing it. So it's not a matter of if and when things will change. Or I guess it's not a matter of when things will change. It's they will change, right? So we need to be prepared. But I would lean in a little bit to answer your question around a project of change that I led for our organization from a learning and development perspective. And this was about changing our sales model that we use to not only how we show up in front of the customer, but also how our coaches have been trained to coach to bring out the best behaviors in their people so that they can have the most impact. And I think it was, our model was in place for 25 years and it became apparent that it was no longer relevant as fast as healthcare is changing. So how do we create a new model, in a sense, was the goal given that can be adaptable and keep up with the change of pace and time. And that was really what the direction was given, to have this clear strategic vision and around the model. But it wasn't just about a model. You can't just hand a model out to everyone, right? And when you think about like the ADKAR model of change and everything that we have to do and think about so intently when bringing a major change to the organization, it's about bringing the right people on the team to really help it bring to life. And Kristy, you alluded to this, that, surround yourself with talented people. So whether it's my immediate team, and in this particular case, it wasn't just my immediate team, but it was a broader team throughout the organization that brought different backgrounds and perspectives and responsibilities, because this type of change can't succeed in isolation. Nor was I naive enough to think that I had all the answers, quite frankly. But we grounded this whole project, and I grounded this whole project in gaining this belief that this model was built for them by them so that they had ownership in it, right? And I think that's so important when we're thinking about the adult learner and adult learning principles. They need to really buy into the why behind this. How is this going to make me better, so that they're bought into driving behavior change. And I think when I reflect on this experience, right, it really taught me that leading change is as much about people and belief as it is about strategy and execution. And when you think about that Venn diagram, it won't be successful if you hyper focus on one or the other, but it's really that intersection where they cross over is where the magic happens.
Yeah, I think you have painted a good picture of how the complexity of change, right? And I mean, a selling model is actually quite substantial. That's the core of what, field team members are doing every day. But even what seems like smaller changes can actually be a lot of work, right? And very, it really is about the really understand the people. So think
Yeah.
that's a great perspective. Yeah, I know for the work that we do, because we do a lot of design development, and again, I always say the hard work actually starts when you implement. As much as it's a big lift to develop, it's really, I think at L&D often maybe doesn't do enough of that sort of sustainment or the pull through or the, hey, are we really making that change happen the way that we thought it was? So I think there's always opportunity to do more of that for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't
Um,
agree more. And I do think about, this project in particular. I was able to raise this baby and be proud of it, and then was able to pass it on to that sustainability team that continues
mm,
to enroll it in, and build it into our culture and the ethos of how we show up. So,
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's another good tidbit. Have a sustainability team if you can for big initiatives.
yeah.
Um, Good. So thank you for sharing a little bit more about your experience and your perspective. I think it helps everyone on the call just get a better sense of what you've done and how you're thinking. I'm going to shift the conversation to technology because it is impossible to ignore right now how much AI and technology in general is having an impact on the world around us, and a lot of change associated with that. And I see a lot of thought leaders saying it's really actually adoption and change management that's one of the biggest barriers with AI. But that aside, Kristy, this is a question for you. How is technology changing what great learning looks like at your organization in tangible ways?
So I think now more than ever, technology can help enable us to everything we ever dreamt possible and wished we could do because we knew we would never have, well, the majority of us don't have teams of hundreds and hundreds of people, but technology will afford us the ability to create personalized learning. We can scale our learning. Even different languages are no longer the barrier that they once were. So, all of the things that kind of hindered our progress. Yet, the challenge that I'm currently facing is what technology, because everyone is saying they do everything. So, how do you, all these different things. So, how do you decide, like, okay, we're going to place our bet on this one? And then also the challenges that, we face going through the approval process, et cetera. And even to do a small pilot, you still have to get a lot of those approvals. And it's fair. The business wants to make sure that it's safe and the technology isn't going to put the company at risk. So I think as those things get ironed out, we will really be able to maximize a lot of the technology that exists out there. I think it's a really exciting time. I think that you need to be pretty intentional of what you're selecting as well, because you also don't want to just have all of these disparate tech tools, entry points everywhere. But yet at the same time, you need to have a minimum viable product to just see, is this going to even work? So I think it's a really fun exploratory time, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, so you're really describing in a way the tension between the speed of innovation and everything that's available hitting up against the structures and systems of large organizations, right? And how that's
Right.
an interesting thing to think about. And Sandy, I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments on that and just on where do you place your bets when it comes to technology and learning?
Yeah, I don't know that there's an easy answer, right? I think you have to sort of jump in and for us, it's involving the right partners, at our organization that are way smarter and know way more about, AI than I do, and bring them in, as consultants as we're determining what is the best systems to be able to utilize that will really jumpstart the learning and really get us to a place when we've talked about adult learning principles for years, but the systems really haven't been there to support it, right? And so we're finally getting to that age and stage where we're getting there. I think the speed of AI, our company isn't as fast as that speed at keeping up, but we'll get there. And I even look at it more on you know just the impact and the skills and capabilities that we're looking for, from our people, right? When I think about the people on my team and the using of AI, I mean, we have to do more at a faster pace with less money. I mean, that's the reality of our business, but still drive impact and organizational change. And so I think it's important as we think about our own self, like, are we being a constant learner? Are we resilient? Are we agile and really open to change so that we can utilize these systems and try to evolve as fast as possible and meet the needs of our business?
Yeah.
But to say that, you still need that human connection side. And I think that even comes through even more so. The future of L&D and what we do from that humanity part will play even a larger role as we double down on AI.
I totally agree. I've been having discussions around that lately too, is just the fatigue of, when everything is overly digitized and learning is by nature in a social process, right? And so really interesting. So we've touched on a few barriers that I've heard. So there's the fact that technology is changing quickly. There are some organizational constraints in terms of getting those, available for your teams. And then, Sandy, you also mentioned a little bit around the skills, just making sure that people have the skills that they're bought in. Sometimes it's mindset. Sometimes they just don't want to use, some people really don't have good feelings towards things like AI. What's our role as leaders? I'm assuming shortening the approval process on new technologies is an uphill battle that no one wants to climb, but maybe we might have a bit more influence over skill sets and adoption. And if either of you could talk a little bit about what you see as L&D's role or as a leader, what your role might be in facilitating that.
Yeah. Kristy, do you want me to kick off kind of what I'm thinking about? And
That'd be great.
yeah. So I do think, there's twofold, like, our role and responsibility is to start the conversations early, right? So we talked a little bit about, going through the process of evaluating of risk of using, newer AI systems, but it's also about socializing it with the other partners, with legal and regulatory, so that they are up to speed as well to make that process a little bit smoother. But when I think about us, like on the front lines who are, in charge of the learning and development, as a people leader, it is coaching to it, right? And leading by example and showing how AI can be utilized, right, to allow us to move at a little bit quicker of a pace so that you can spend time where it really matters and prioritizing projects. So I do think it starts with us and leading the way, showing what good looks like.
Mm-hmm. Kristy, do you have anything to add?
I think you said it, you captured it really well, Sandy, and just how are we internally within the L&D team optimizing it? And then thinking about per role, how might others benefit as well? So I think that's where we're at within, I specifically think of AI right now, like how to adopt such a transformational way of working. AI is what allows us to do that. When else have you had a 24/7 colleague peer at the ready? For those of us that kind of work strange hours, it's awesome when there's someone else that is, willing to banter with you and have that conversation. But I just feel like that helps to get yourself to a good point where then you can turn around and have a clearer question, have a more pointed needs from the expert. So where you need additional guidance from. So I just think it's a really exciting time. I know there's a lot of discussion out there about what it's going to mean to work. And for those of us, I just know the number one thing you could be doing is ensuring that you're upskilling yourself and trying to master your own craft and always learning, just like you mentioned, which was so kind of you, Jessica. I feel like you're the same way, continuing to be curious and chasing that interest and ensuring you're continuing to elevate your own skill sets is so important right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We could probably talk about technology all day, but we only have a few minutes left. And I want to just ask you both a more personal question, which is when you're thinking about yourself as a leader, what are you looking to intentionally practice or strengthen right now? And Sandy, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. I think for me, it really stems around, the learning principles, and we focus so much on others, right, in our role quite often. And when we think about that 70-20-10 is, in this time of change, really focusing on, whether you want to say it's at 90%, through mentorship and self-paced learning, but to really dive in to particular skills that'll make me better as a leader. But even when I think about a learning and development professional, we spoke about it earlier on, Kristy, around that we're those strategic partners. And so as we move forward, how are we bringing value and showing the value that we bring to the organization? It's making sure that we're there to connect the dots and we're seen as a strategic partner, but that we're pulling that red thread through with measurement. I would say that's one thing that always sort of gets put on the side burner a little bit and not at the forefront of everything we do. And so when I think about myself and leading through change and with all the plates that are spinning, if we could become better at showing the measurement and the impact that training has had, then on the back end, it makes it easier when we're asking for more funding, whether it's for a new AI platform or to support a new learning program. And so that's where my focus is in the next 6 months to make sure we can nail that this year.
Totally agree. Measurement is going to become increasingly important. And Kristy, I'll give the last word to you. Tell me what you're strengthening or being intentional about right now.
Yeah, Sandy, it's funny to me the similarities of what you shared because I think the importance of speaking the language of our stakeholders and having that data and the metrics to then prove no one cares about butts and seats. No one cares about smile sheets. We know this, but yet it's with great intention that you need to be able to uncover. And it doesn't have to be for everything. I know last year we hyper focused on a couple of key initiatives and ensuring that, what do our stakeholders care about? Well, they care about sales performance. So how can we, and is there a way to tie what we're doing to any degree to the sales performance? And that has been something that I'm double downing on this year and ensuring that being very intentional and deliberate because the pace of change is so drastic. I think it is important and we can't slow down and make sure everything is perfect, but we do need to make sure that we are able to accelerate where we must and then also constantly evaluate what is dragging us down and how can we reduce that friction to make sure that we are as impactful and seen as such a strategic partner with our business because we are such when you have leaders that get it, it is such a valued opportunity for the organization to catapult because people are what makes each business different. And so how do we help to elevate that?
Absolutely. How do you make people the competitive advantage
Totally.
for your organization? Yeah.
Love them.
Love it. That's a wrap, folks. I want to extend a huge thank you to my discussion partners, Sandy and Kristy. Thank you for this. It's been a terrific conversation. Thank you to everyone who's joined. And again, wish you all a happy International Women's Day.
Thank you for
Thank you,
hosting.
Jessica. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks.
joining, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.